We decided to write a book a long time ago for three reasons. From the vantage of being teachers, we wanted to put material and information in the hands of our students that would provoke them to thought while conveying knowledge about American politics. As citizens, we were concerned, we're talking now about the early and mid-1970s, about the state of American politics and even more about the state of knowledge about American politics. And we wanted to enhance the capacity of our students to think deeply and to be prodded to consider how they wish to act from within their own ethical and political perspectives within American politics. And as political scientists, we love the challenge of thinking about the system as a whole, as opposed to being specialists in Congress or the judiciary or in race relations, etc. So those were our three main sets of motivations. The book we set out to write, and I think the current 6th edition still maintains that impulse, was to write a book that had an architecture, a character that was more than that characterized most American politics textbooks. That is, a book with a perspective, a point of view, an argument that students need not agree with, but that would provoke them to think about fundamental questions in American political life. The subtitle of The Politics of Power is a critical introduction to American politics. Critical is a complex word. Critical means fundamental. Critical means or refers to critique. Critical also means, or is an invitation, to think more deeply about questions rather than take them for granted. And in those three senses, this book is a critical introduction to American politics. The critical aspect of it in terms of fundamentals takes us to a focused series of questions about the relationship between inequalities generated by the economic order, by capitalism, and the political order of democracy. The relationship, the tensions that connect them constitute the central vantage of this volume. In that sense, the book is committed to the understanding that the relationship between capitalism and democracy, democracy in which citizens are all equal, or should be all equal, and capitalism that automatically generates and is based on inequality, that tension should inform the way in which we think about our institutions, about our public policies, about our social movements, about possibilities for change. There are other critical textbooks, and they're good. This one, I think, is distinctive in two ways. First, it tries very hard not to preach. It doesn't ask students to agree with us. It doesn't say, this is the right point of view. This is our point of view. We invite you as students to enter into our world of conversation and consider for yourselves how you react to these issues which are critical to American politics. And second, I think this book is different because it's deeper than most critical texts in terms of its treatment of institutions, its treatment of public policy, its treatment of the constitutional heritage of the country. That is, an instructor can use this book and students can learn from this book in ways that will not compromise their capacity to study the material that appears in the best standard mainstream textbooks. Without that sacrifice, they also get the advantage of having a capacity to engage an argument or a set of related arguments and figure out for themselves what they think about them. And that's one of our main goals. Students who read this book tend to be provoked, interested, and made, I think, more thoughtful about their own beliefs and politics. Over the years, Mark and Alan and I have received letters, emails from students of all political persuasions that take the form of saying, example, I'm a conservative. Thank you for your book. You provoked me to think harder about the character of my beliefs, and you've empowered me to think about how American politics and policy works. We make it very clear in the book with the what do you think boxes that we've added, with the summary questions, that we want, above all, for students not necessarily to agree with us or the arguments we make, but to find the book to be a prod to reflect deeply, more deeply than they ordinarily do by reading the newspaper, about American political life, their place in it, the character of citizenship, how social and political change might occur in any particular direction that pleases them the most. Of course, as authors, we have our own perspective that we don't hide. We make crystal clear, but in making it crystal clear, we invite others to engage with us. And we find, in the main, that students who use this text find themselves more actively engaged in learning and in their introduction to American politics than they might otherwise be when they're taught with a book that they interpret as being just the facts. The three main questions that have obsessed American politics during the early years of the Obama administration have been the economic meltdown and the stimulus package that the President proposed and Congress put in place, healthcare reform and transformation of the American healthcare system, a source of enormous conflict and debate, and financial regulation of Wall Street. These questions, these policy issues, these controversies directly intersect the main features of this edition of The Politics of Power. The book is organized in three main parts. The first part deals with questions of political economy, the relationship of capitalism and government, the role of government in shaping and regulating the economy. The second part deals with the institutions of American life, the presidency, Congress, the courts. And the third part deals with public policy. Each of those issues is considered within each of these sections, and the three sections of the book together give students the capacity to understand and to think hard about these contemporary public policy questions. These are questions where economics, politics, institutions, and policy all come together in a fundamental and deep way. There are a number of new pedagogical features in this edition of The Politics of Power. Two of them are a glossary, which we've added at the end of the book, and at the end of each chapter there's a summary. But the most important innovations for teaching in this book are the what do you think questions that are embedded inside each chapter and the critical questions that end each chapter. And the purpose of each is the same: to provoke students to reflect hard, to think deeply about what they believe and think, having read the material in the book. Within the chapters, the what do you think questions focus on particular points that are made as they are being made. For example, in the social policy chapter, we ask students, what do you think? Are individuals primarily responsible for remedying issues of social inequality, or does government have a key role to play in that attempt to remedy a deep inequality? Students will have different answers to these questions. These, of course, are questions that have deep philosophical importance and political importance within American life. The summary questions, or the critical questions at the end of the chapter, are intended to have the students reflect on the whole of the chapter, but also to help guide their reading of the chapter. That is, they should be attentive to certain central issues, but when they finish, they should be able to reflect for themselves about those critical questions. And together, these two pedagogical innovations signal to students that a critical text doesn't simply mean critical from the point of view of the authors, but critical in the sense of making them critical readers, critical thinkers about American political life. Writing a book as a team is always a challenge. But the team of Mark Kesselman, Alan Draper, and yours truly has worked, I think, uncommonly well. Mark Kesselman is someone who brings deep knowledge of American politics, but also deep knowledge of European and comparative politics to the study of the United States. And one of the hallmarks he has insisted on from the beginning is that we situate the American experience in a wider, comparative, relational perspective. And he brings enormous skill to that effort. Alan Draper is a master teacher at St. Lawrence in northern New York. He has won teaching awards. He I would say, more than Mark and more than I've accomplished. He's a kind of genius at communication with students. And he has held the other two of us, to the task of writing a book that is both sharply etched and clear, so that students can grasp the ideas and then have the capacity to form their own views. And I love working with them. We had individual responsibilities for first drafts of different chapters, but each of us revised the others. All three of us had a hand, therefore, in writing every page of the text. And in the end, we have a collective product which I hope, I'm confident, is better than the sum of individual authors' parts. The tensions the book focuses on, tensions about the relationship between the economy and American democracy, tensions between inequality generated in the economic sphere and the equality of democratic citizenship, those are permanent tensions in American life. They characterize the past of the American experience, the present, and they will characterize the future of the American experience. What makes the authors of this book immensely hopeful about the future of the country is that as these tensions get worked out through a democratic political process, opportunities exist, always exist, for change. Sometimes changes are not necessarily for the best, but often they are. If you think about how far we've come as a country, in 1930, old people had no public pensions. There was no Social Security. They had no guaranteed health care. Through the democratic political process, government settled on Social Security in the 1930s, on Medicare in the 1960s, and today, virtually no American, no political party wishes to unravel those transformations to American life which tended to lift older Americans out of poverty. One could cite many, many examples of racial change, of greater social justice, of greater opportunity that emerge when American citizens, through politics, mobilized to demand change in accord with their desires and preferences. And it's the democratic process that gives us hope that we can have a more equitable society and can find ways to manage the inherent tensions in American political, social, and economic life.